Welcome to Geo College Radio. I'm Miles King, joined by my lovely co-host, Jordan Lenderman. How are you doing, Jordan?
I appreciate that. I'm doing great, Miles.
Good to hear, good to hear.
You're quite lovely, if I might say so myself.
What? Well, why, thank you, good sir. Let's move on to somebody, to a team that's feeling very lovely right now. The Arkansas Razorbacks coming off that thrilling victory versus the Ole Miss Rebels. As they will head to Jordan-Hare Stadium this weekend to face the Auburn Tigers, who are surprisingly better than many people predicted at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, their defense is playing lights out, and Sean White leads the SEC in completion percentage, so it's going to be a tough out at Jordan-Hare Stadium, like you said. But Arkansas, it's very perplexing to me. Arkansas is a heavy underdog in the FPI in every single game for the rest of the season. And we play teams like Mississippi State and Missouri. So it's just weird to think about that based on the way that they've played. I think this is going to be a great game for the Razorbacks. I think we should be favored for the rest of the season. Maybe not with Florida, but all the other games, we should be a favorite just matchup-wise. It'll be interesting to see how this one's played out, though, against one of the better defenses in the SEC. We'll have to definitely make sure that Auburn's running game is shut down, and just hope that Sean White doesn't light us up in the passing game.
Yeah, that's surprising that they're not favored in the FPI for the rest of the season, especially playing against teams like Mississippi State and Missouri. Hopefully, you guys will be able to get a big win, and maybe those FPI predictions will then reflect that in the coming weeks. Now moving on to a directional rivalry between Eastern and Western Michigan, the Fighting PJ Flex of Western Michigan. They've got a top 20 team this year, and he's a good coach, and he's got them playing really well this year so far.
Yeah, definitely. Be on the lookout for one of those big programs to look at him, or I'm sure all the good programs will be looking at him to see if he's interested in a move after his great season so far. But Zach Terrell is playing lights out, and of course, that insane stiff arm by the Western Michigan running back was just great to see. Absolutely punishing that poor defender. I think he's on life support at this point, but we're still not sure how he's doing. Of course, I'm kidding. He's fine, but this Western Michigan team is legit, and I think that they'll take care of business against Eastern Michigan this weekend.
Yeah, PJ Fleck has been a coach on the rise for a few years now. He's really, really high quality. He's built Western Michigan into a formidable program. Not maybe the quality of a program Houston has become under Tom Herman, but he's definitely got Western Michigan on the right direction. I would be shocked if a bigger program doesn't snatch him up this summer in the coaching carousel, because he definitely is deserving of a new job. And I anticipate the Western Michigan Broncos to easily handle the Eastern Michigan Eagles.
And Western Michigan being 7-0 at this point, with the rest of their schedule, could they run the table? And if they do, are they going to be able to get into a New Year's Six Bowl possibly? And maybe even the playoff? I doubt that, but you never know with the way this team is playing.
Yeah, I mean, if they went out here, I definitely could foresee them sneaking into a New Year's Six Bowl, especially if they're winning in impressive fashion and blowing teams out. I don't see why you don't give the little guy a chance and give him the opportunity to showcase what they have in a New Year's Six Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, they've been playing well this whole year, and really a New Year's Six Bowl is well-deserved. I'm not so sure about the playoff. I mean, there are just so many great teams this year, but it'd be tough to not give them a New Year's Six Bowl at least.
Coming up this weekend, we have another big matchup in the SEC as Texas A&M travels to Tuscaloosa to take on the Crimson Tide in a highly anticipated matchup. I have a feeling, though, this is going to be a pretty disappointing game once it actually kicks off, and we're going to see how dominant Alabama is, even against Texas A&M.
Yeah, I don't really think that there's any team in the SEC, at least, that's going to be able to compete on the large scale against such a great Alabama team. I'm just confused at how incredible this team is. and just their ability to stop all offensive play of the other team, essentially. They're giving up a little bit more in the passing game than I'd like to see. And, of course, if you're that dominant defensively, aside from the passing game or the lack of the ability to stop the passing game, it's going to be tough for anyone to compete against you because you have to have a balance there if you want to beat this Alabama squad. And so I don't think Texas A&M is really going to compete. If there's one coach that's able to get revenge against a team or against an opposing player in Trevor Knight from that Sugar Bowl, it's going to be Nick Saban. I think he's going to come back with the fury. It might even be uglier than that Tennessee-Alabama game. It'd be tough to be that ugly, but it could get ugly quick, Miles.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think the Alabama is going to come out and try to make a statement in this game. They're going to score early. They're going to score quickly. You're right, Nick Saban still going to remember that Sugar Bowl game where Trevor Knight embarrassed the Crimson Tide. But I think the Tide rolls once again, easily handles A&M, and once again they show that they're the dominant force in the SEC.
Will they continue that streak of defensive touchdowns, do you think?
I think so. I'd have to go with they do. They will continue that streak of defensive touchdowns.
I agree.
Or is it defensive or non-offensive? Either way, I think they're going to score in some fashion like that.
I agree. I think. I mean, like I said in the podcast before, Tennessee lost to Alabama. Even if their offense didn't show up on the field, it was 14-10 with the special teams touchdowns and interception return for a touchdown. So it's going to be tough for A&M to show them anything that they're not able to handle.
Yeah, I think it's Nick Saban's personal challenge to his team for the defense and special teams to beat the other team by themselves with no help from the offense. So we'll see if they rise up and meet the special challenge again this week. Moving on to a big game in Big 12 country, we have the TCU Horned Frogs visiting Morgantown and the Couch Burners of West Virginia. West Virginia coming off a big win in Lubbock against Texas Tech, as their defense was really on display. They shut down the Red Raiders. The Red Raiders only scored 10 points while the starting unit was out. That snaps their 9 straight. I believe it was 9 straight games of scoring 50 or more points at home, which was an NCAA record, and they didn't even get close to it. West Virginia looked dominant in a different league. So I think it'll be really interesting to see in what should be a step up in competition, how they look against the Horned Frogs.
I think TCU and Texas Tech are modeled exactly the same, and so in preparation week for Texas Tech, you're running into essentially the team you're playing next week with a slightly more mobile quarterback and Kenny Hill. I don't think this is going to raise any new challenges, and my TCU pick to win the Big 12 is in jeopardy at this point.
Yeah, I do think TCU is a little bit better than Texas Tech, maybe set up the same way, but I do think they have a little bit better talent, a little bit better coaching. I think it'll be tougher for West Virginia, but that defense is legit. And Kenny Hill, while a good quarterback, not a great quarterback. And I think if they shut down Mahomes, who I would consider a great quarterback, even if he's not playing on a great team, he carries that team, and they shut him down completely. I anticipate West Virginia winning this game, heading into Stillwater next week with a still undefeated record.
I agree. And on that note, with the Stillwater game, how is that an 11 o'clock kickoff? That's an absolute kick to the crotch. Awful.
It is absurd, the amount of 11 a.m. We haven't had a night game this year. We've only had 2 kickoffs at 2:30. They were the opener against Southeastern Louisiana and against Pitt, and the rest of them have been at 11 a.m., which is just ridiculous because this is West Virginia, who's an undefeated team. They're coming to Stillwater, have a good possibility to be undefeated next week. OSU, while they've lost 2 games this year, it's still a quality matchup. This is a good chance for the Big 12 to get on prime time and showcase their stuff, but instead they elected to put OU Kansas in the 6 p.m. slot. It's just an inexplicable decision, and the Big 12 continues to be miserable. Of course, they don't select it; the TV networks do. But this goes hand in hand with the whole expansion mess, which was finally put to rest as the Big 12 elects not to expand. The members have voted to keep the league at 10 teams. Whether this holds and whether they stick with the decision or not, we'll see. But for now, the Big 12 stays at 10.
And the irony of that is still very present. Same with the Big 10.
Yes.
Now at 12. So.
Well, actually,
now at 14. They did add. They had a couple of good additions, including that great Rutgers team that's gotten blown out by 139 points against the two favorites in the league.
Yeah, a real quality addition to the league. Ups everybody's strength of schedule.
Oh, yeah.
Rutgers, they're a far cry from the days of beating Arkansas 2 years in a row.
That was something I just told you about, so thanks for bringing that one up.
Yep,
We're far past the John L. Smith days. We don't have to deal with him anymore. We're all smiling, like he said. That's what I gleaned from his tenure at Arkansas, but that's the only thing I want to remember from him being head coach.
Yeah, at least he wasn't fired on the field like another Arkansas coach after losing to the Citadel.
True.
At least that's something he can hold his dignity.
That's true, but he was probably hated more than that coach was.
Yeah, yes. Speaking of being fired on the field, Gary Patterson might have been fired on the field if his team had lost at Kansas a couple weeks ago.
That is a bold
Kansas,
statement.
Of course, is the
very bold statement.
Maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration.
Scalding hot take.
I reckon to say any coach that loses at Kansas deserves to go right on the hot seat. And Gary Patterson, he was almost thrown on the very hot seat, but he managed to win that game. OSU travels to Lawrence this weekend to face the Kansas Jayhawks, and after seeing the fight they put up against TCU, hopefully they'll be playing this game a little more seriousness than they would have before. We saw what they did against Iowa State when they came out flat and didn't give the Cyclones the respect they deserve. So hopefully they realize you can't come out and play like that and expect to win, even against a team like Kansas.
Yeah, and this team has a lot more talent this year than they did last year. Of course, they didn't win a game last year, and they have won one this year, but they are playing close. That's the key to all of this. They're playing some great competition close, like a TCU squad that narrowly escaped Lawrence, and I'm not going to be shocked if it's close in the beginning. If Oklahoma State didn't really prepare totally seriously, and maybe they're looking ahead to West Virginia, who's the favorite in the Big 12 right now, along with Baylor. But I think Oklahoma State ends up pulling out the victory. It's going to be tough for them to get really hyped for this game, though.
Yeah, and we've had a history of slow starts in Lawrence and keeping those games close. But hopefully we'll put this game away early, get the backups in, give the starters some more rest, give some more time to recuperate for some injuries or some stingers, and rest up to face the Mountaineers the following week on homecoming. Moving on to another big SEC matchup. This is Ole Miss. Well, maybe not huge SEC matchup, but still, it's Ole Miss versus LSU. Both teams have kind of had subpar seasons compared to their expectations going in. Of course, LSU firing Les Miles a few games into the season, and Ole Miss has choked up some games when they were ahead, disappointingly. How do you see this playing out? Does Coach O lead the Tigers to victory?
Well, all right, and this Ole Miss team might be the best 3-3 team to ever exist in all of history.
That's a hot take.
A very hot take, but I think a lot of people would agree with me. This is a great team. It reminds you of an Oklahoma State team in 2009 that was slow very early, but they came on in the end, and I see them in the same light. But Ed O, he's cooking something special. While his only game as head coach was the demolition of Missouri, who's almost always one of the worst teams in the SEC since their first 2 seasons. It's going to be tough for me to pick against Coach O with a sentimental factor that I have, just because everyone loves Coach O. But
everyone loves.
But I can't see Chad Kelly and this Ole Miss Rebel squad dropping it into a losing record range. So this one's a toss-up for me at this point. I'm going to have to look more into this and see what decision comes out of it.
Yeah, I mean, Coach O, of course, only has that one game, like you said, which they did win big, but it was against a poor Missouri squad. This will be his first big test since the game last week was postponed. But it'll be interesting to see how he does. They have the athletes, and Ole Miss does as well. So it's going to be definitely which coaching staff gets their tactics right, which one prepares their players the best, and whoever does that is going to win. Now on to our last game we're going to cover today. This is the OU Sooners going to Lubbock, taking on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, who just came off an embarrassing home defeat to West Virginia that we mentioned earlier. However, this is Baker Mayfield's homecoming to Lubbock. Of course, he was famously a walk-on at Texas Tech, didn't get a scholarship, so he transferred to OU, and now he's a potential Heisman Trophy winner with the Sooners. So, going into the season, he was in the going into the season, he hasn't quite performed up to the expectations he set for last year. But you still got to imagine that Kingsbury is kicking himself for letting Mayfield go with all the success he's had recently. But to the game itself, how do you see this one playing out?
I mean, I think Mahomes is very comparable to Baker Mayfield. He's got a lot of the same skill sets. So it wasn't a huge loss for the Texas Tech Red Raiders. But Texas Tech, like you said, they had just had a streak broken of 50-plus points in each game at home. And I think they're going to take that personally. I think they'll come out with a fire. And this is an OU team with a secondary that gets burned consistently. Every once in a while, they'll have a flash in the pan, just some greatness sprinkled in. But on a consistent basis, they're not proving to be great against the pass. And that's exactly what Texas Tech wants to manipulate and expose in that game. And then Texas Tech's defense, of course, can't really stop anybody. They're going to have to get some turnovers, but don't be shocked if Texas Tech pulls off an upset.
Yeah, of course, it's all about matchups in the modern game. Kansas State, of course, is a poor matchup against OU. Kansas State couldn't throw the ball at all, but OU's pass defense is bad, so they weren't able to take advantage of that. We're still able to hang close for most of the game. And the West Virginia secondary, very good, very talented. They were able to shut down the Red Raiders' passing attack. But I think you're right. I think this could be an opportunity for Mahomes and the Red Raider offense to bounce back and for Taco Tech to bring home a victory and Baker Mayfield's homecoming.
Yeah, and Baker Mayfield's going to be a little bit too emotional. Just my opinion of what I believe will happen. He's going to come out and he's going to try and make a point. He'll have a few mistakes, probably a couple of interceptions. And that Texas Tech defense is going to pop him pretty hard for leaving the program.
Yeah, he is quite the fiery character on the field, and hopefully he doesn't let his emotions get the best of him. But if he does, they could be in for some trouble during this game.
And don't forget, Samaje Perine is out for this game, so that's a big hit to the OU rushing game.
Oh wow, I did not know that. I didn't realize he was. I know he didn't play for the last part of the K-State game, but I didn't know he was out. So Joe Mixon will have to really be the one punch inside that backfield. And that concludes our preview of this week's action. This week we have one listener question. Be sure you guys are sending those in throughout the week and before the show. We know you guys have questions. We want to answer them, so make sure you submit those on Twitter, Facebook, text message, any way you can get them. Message in a bottle even. We'll take that. But the question this week is from FFOTP Peyton Weiss. She asks, can you describe the offensive defense of Oklahoma State and Arkansas in one adjective? Jordan, I'll let you go first on this.
So, of course, our offense would have to be offensive. That would be my adjective. Of course, we do a lot of offense-like things. We prefer to score a lot. No, for my real adjective, I have to say gutsy, because we're one of the best at converting fourth downs. We consistently are just doing things that we weren't able to do before, like last year with a now new and improved confidence in the younger brother of our quarterback last year, Austin Allen. So I think gutsy would be a great way to describe our offense. And for our defense, you could say flashy. There are definitely flashes of brilliance for our defense. The one-handed interception by Andre Tolliver this weekend, absolutely incredible. But there are definitely a lot of moments where I'm scared watching the Razorbacks because they're just driving down the field on us, drive after drive. So I would say flashy, not on a consistent basis, but more in a flash in a pan kind of way.
Good, solid adjectives, Jordan.
Thank you.
For OSU, I'll start with the defense first. I'll go out and say lackluster so far this season. The defense is the defensive line is stout. We're deep on the defensive line, but our linebackers have been playing average, and the secondary, which starts 3 seniors and 1 junior, they should be playing a lot better. They've gotten burned consistently. There are always holes in coverage. That's the real weakness of our defense. And you'd expect such an experienced secondary with the talent they have to be performing better. Hopefully they use the bye week this week to do some coaching up and improve before Kansas. But so far it's been lackluster. On the offensive side of the ball, I think you have to go with chameleon. They've been a chameleon so far this year. And you might think that's a strange adjective.
I would think that is a strange adjective.
Since chameleon isn't really an adjective, but it is a noun. But I'm turning it into an adjective. I'll tell you why. Unlike the air raid offenses of Dana Holgorsen, Todd Monken, where they ran very few plays, ran them very effectively, but only had 8, 9, 10 plays they ran consistently throughout the game. Most of those plays were just run-pass options, and there was very, very little variety in the playbook. They ran a very small playbook. This year, comparatively, they have a completely different game plan going into each week. Some weeks, like against Baylor, they're trying to run the ball, they're controlling the game, they're controlling the clock, running effectively. Other weeks, like against Pittsburgh, they're airing it out. They were throwing it deep to James Washington, racking up the yards through the air. Mason Rudolph got the school record for passing yards in a single game that week. But it's been interesting to see how Yurcich has developed a different and unique game plan for each opponent so far. And I'm interested to see if they keep doing this season to season and what they come up with throughout the rest of the year. In some ways, I do prefer the old Holge and Monken offenses where you knew what they were going to run, but they ran it well. But at the same time, it is exciting for OSU to almost see what they're trying to do each week on offense. And so, chameleon, that's the word I use for the OSU offense.
A very interesting word choice. I noticed that you're talking up Mike Yurcich. Are you a fan of him now? Do you think that he's proving his worth?
I think he has improved every year he has been here so far. I think he deserves a lot more credit than people give him. Definitely sometimes his play calling is a little bit questionable, but no doubt he has a great offensive mind. The Cowboys, each season, they're fantastic with throwing in new wrinkles on offense, new formations. They caused the NCAA to change a rule in formations, actually, because they exploited a loophole. And the week after they did that against TCU, the NCAA came out with a new rule and said, you're not allowed to do that anymore, which was very frustrating for the Cowboys since they had practiced with that new package the entire week. But I think he is underrated, definitely, in his scheming and his play design and his offensive mind. The play calling sometimes leaves a little bit to be desired, but you may have to give him some slack and wonder how much Gundy is actually involved in that, because sometimes it does get a little bit too conservative. But I think he is proving his worth now. I think he's definitely improved, and I'm excited to see where he takes this offense for the rest of the season.
I like that adjective choice. I would have to agree that having a specific game plan for each team is showing its benefits for you guys. So I'll give a little bit of kudos to Yurcich, but at the same time, I want to see him prove himself against the big boys week in and week out in the Big 12.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully, once we get to the end of the schedule against the big boys, we'll be able to put some quality wins on the schedule. And that concludes our preview episode of this week's podcast. Thank you guys for listening. Jordan, what do you have to say?
I would just like to reiterate that we just love having a great fan base like you guys, but we want you to be more involved. We want listener questions in ample amounts. We want to be able to have our listener question only segment of the podcast again like we had early on, because we know you have questions and we love to answer them. It's a lot of fun for us, and I'm sure you guys are wanting some inside knowledge on a lot of that stuff, and that's something we can provide for you. And of course, we want the word of this podcast to be spread to other people, people that really enjoy football and want a taste of it throughout the week. We have it plenty on Saturday. We have the NFL, which is not very good. I hate watching the NFL. So we don't have to watch, or we don't get to watch college football any days but Saturday and a little bit on Thursday and Friday. So we're trying to prolong that experience for you guys throughout the week, so you have a little bit more of what you enjoy in a week that for some of you might be more monotonous than you would like.
Yeah, we're here for our fans. We're here for a little break of college football, which is never bad.
Amen to that.
All right, well, that wraps us up. Jordan, thank you for joining me tonight. Thank you, listeners, for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Pod out.